Hey guys, welcome to Algebra 2, Lesson 7.5, rewriting as a function of a positive acute angle and using reference angles. So first thing I'd like to do is review our special right triangles. The first one being a 30, 60, 90. So the smallest angle is 30, the larger one is 60, and obviously it's a right triangle. The smallest side, opposite the 30-degree angle, is 1, the hypotenuse is 2, the middle side is square root 3. In our 45, 45, 90 right triangle, obviously it's isosceles. So the two legs are each 1. The hypotenuse would be square root 2. Now throughout this lesson, I'm going to use these triangles. You won't see them on the screen, but if I ask you to evaluate the sine of 60 without a calculator, you're going to go to 60, do opposite over hypotenuse. So that's where I'm going to get this value from. Tangent of 45 degrees. Well, tangent's opposite over adjacent. Go to 45. There's opposite. There's adjacent. That's 1 over 1 or just 1. Now, you might have all these memorized from the lesson before. That would be awesome. But if you don't, this is where I'm getting the information from. All right, the first example, we're going to use a reference angle to express tangent of 323 degrees as a function of a positive acute angle. So that means I'm not evaluating, I'm just going to rewrite. Now, when it says function, that means it's going to be sine, cosine, or tangent. In this case, it'll be tangent. A positive acute angle, which means inside here I'll have a reference angle. And to determine whether I'm positive or negative, I'm going to use ASTC to see what quadrant I am in and whether tangent is positive or negative in that quadrant. So this is what my final answer will look like. So let's first sketch 323 degrees. That's in the fourth quadrant. ASTC, I know that's cosine's quadrant. That means tangent is going to be negative. Now, to get your reference angle, remember, it's how far this is from either 180 or 360, whichever it's closest to. So obviously in the fourth quadrant, I'm using 360. So to calculate my reference angle, I'll take 360 minus 323, which is 37. So that's my reference angle. And that function right there is exactly the same as this, except this is a positive acute angle. Okay, let's try that a couple more times. Express each as a function of a positive acute angle. So I recognize here that I have sine. So my final answer, my function, will be sine. Next, figure out where 110 degrees is. Second quadrant. That's sine's quadrant. Sine is positive, so my answer is going to be positive. You can put a plus sign there, but you don't need to, obviously. It's understood. Now it's just a matter of getting the reference angle. The reference angle is how far that is from the x-axis. So if this is 110, to get my reference angle, I do 180 minus 110, and that's 70. That goes in here. And that's all they want. We cannot evaluate that without a calculator because 70 degrees is not in one of those special right triangles we talked about up above. Cosine of 260. So first thing I'll do is I'll jot down cosine. Inside the parentheses will be a reference angle, and I might have a negative out in front. Well, let's see where 260 degrees is. 260 is in the third quadrant. ASTT. So tangent's positive, which means sine would be negative and cosine would be negative. So this is going to have a negative in front of it. Now, to get your reference angle, you have to figure out how far 260 degrees is from 180. So I'll subtract 180, and I believe that gives me 80 degrees. And that goes in here. That's your reference angle. So this expression right here is equivalent to this. What we've done is we've converted the angle to a positive acute angle. Now let's figure out how to do that and find the ratio. So I need to evaluate sine of 330 degrees. Here are the steps. You rewrite this as a function of a positive acute angle. Now, the reason that it's negative sine 30 is because this reference angle here is 30 degrees. ASTC, this is cosine's quadrant, so we know sine is negative. This intermediate step is called, as we've been doing, rewriting as a function of a positive acute angle. And we want to go one step beyond that. Now we want to evaluate. So we're going to evaluate using special right triangle to get the value. So I look at, I'll do it up here, negative sine 30 degrees. So I have a negative out front, and we should recognize, either have it memorized, think of the chart, or use the triangle. Sine of 30 is 1/2. So that value is going to be negative 1/2. Now we're going to practice a bunch. I'm not going to read through the steps in this video. I'll kind of do it as I work through the examples. I think it might be easier to pick up there, but obviously this is in your notes if you want to refer back to it. Find the exact value of cosine negative 150. So first, I'm going to write this as a function of a positive acute angle and then get the value. So I actually want the value as my final answer. What I like to do first, make a sketch. It's a little bit tricky because it's negative 150. Negative 150 is in the third quadrant. So think AST, this is tangent's quadrant, which means sine and cosine are both negative. So I know my answer is going to be negative. Next, I have to get the reference angle. So if this angle here is 150, negative 150, right? I want to find that. So how far is that from 180? 180 minus 150 equals 30. So that is the angle that will go in here. I know cosine of 30 is square root 3 over 2 from the triangle. So that's my final answer. The more you know your reference angles, your exact trig ratios, and your quadrants, the faster this becomes. But I still need to show a little bit of work. Example 3, find the exact value of cosine 210. So another cosine question, which means I'll have cosine of something equals, and that'll be my answer there. Next, sketch a 210 degree angle. 210 degrees is also in the third quadrant, like the one up above. That's still tangent's quadrant. Tangent's positive, which means cosine's negative. So my answer will be negative. 210 degrees. So 210 degrees going this way, but my reference angle is still this one. Looks very similar to the one up above. I take 210, I subtract 180. Well, that's 30 degrees again. So it turns out that I get the same result from up above because cosine of 30 is square root 3 over 2. So an observation to make here is that cosine of negative 150 is the same as cosine of 210. Those are equal. The reason they're equal, it's the same angle really, right? If you notice the way we sketch it, it's just this one I want that direction, and for the positive angle, I want that direction. But you still ended up here. Think about what we call those angles. So cosine of negative 150 and cosine 210 are equal. And that is because negative 150 degrees and 210 degrees are called coterminal. They have the same terminal side. So in general, if two angles are coterminal, their trig values are exactly the same. So equal. All right, find the exact value of each angle. I'm going to go through a little bit quicker here. Tangent negative 225. So let's do this. Equals tangent. So the first thing I want to do is figure out where is negative 225 degrees. It's negative, you got to be careful. So it's between negative 180 and negative 270 is right here. AS, this is sine's quadrant, which means tangent's going to be negative. Now you need the reference angle right here. So you take 225 minus 180, and that's 45 degrees. That's the reference angle that goes inside that function. And I know tangent of 45 is 1. Don't forget my answer is negative because I'm in the second quadrant. Tangent's negative in the second quadrant. Sine 135, let's rewrite that as the function of a positive acute angle. Where is 135? That's in the second quadrant, and sine is positive there. So I know this is going to be positive. You can put a plus in, but you don't need to. Next, we're going to find the reference angle, which is this one. So how far is that from 180? 45 degrees. 45 is going to go in that function. It's a positive acute angle. And sine of 45 is 1 over square root 2. Sine of 150. All right, so let's rewrite it. Sine of some acute angle and figure out where negative 150 degrees is. So it's between negative 90 and negative 180. It's in here. AST. So since tangent's positive, sine's going to be negative there. My reference angle, how far is this from 180? So 180 minus 150, the reference angle is going to be 30 degrees. 30 degrees goes in here. I know sine of 30 is 1/2, and it's negative because I'm in the third quadrant, so this is negative 1/2. Cosine 120, all right, so equals, I'll do this here to set up the outline. I like doing that. Next, let's sketch 120. It's between 90 and 180. Second quadrant, AS. Sine's quadrant, which means cosine is negative. So I got to throw a negative in here. Next comes the reference angle. How far from the x? How far from 180? So 180 minus 120, that's 60. So my reference angle is going to be 60 for this problem. And from my triangles, I know cosine of 60 is 1/2. And I negate it because I'm in quadrant 2. And cosine's negative there. Okay, last couple questions. I know I went through that a little bit quick, but hopefully you can go back and kind of review that. And again, the more of these you practice, the better you'll be. Vocab, find a coterminal angle for 150. Well, I'm going to do a little bit better now. I'm going to find 2 of them. So the way you get coterminal angles, if you remember, you add or subtract 360 degrees. So here's one. I can take that and add 360 degrees. So I believe that's 510 degrees. That would be another one that's positive. I could also take 150 and subtract 360 degrees. So I think that is negative 210 degrees. B, find a reference angle for 150. So here's the difference between coterminal and reference. Coterminal is the same angle, same position. Reference angle always is positive and acute. And you ask yourself, how far from 180 degrees or 360, whatever you're closest to. So in this one, 150 degrees is in the second quadrant. My reference angle is this positive acute angle here. It's always drawn to the x. So basically, I just need to take 180 and subtract 150. So the reference angle is 30 degrees. There's no other reference angle for 150. It's 30, period. So there's just a quick illustration of the difference between coterminal and reference. All right, guys, that concludes day 5 notes. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to reach out if you have any questions on any of this material.